Beyond Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, who are the forgotten masters of Kung Fu? This video delves into the hidden history of Kung Fu legends, revealing their unique fighting styles, inspiring stories, and contributions to the art. In the grand mosaic of martial arts history, certain names echo through the centuries: Bruce Lee, Wong Fei Hung, Ip Man. Their stories are etched into the collective memory of martial arts enthusiasts worldwide. But behind the celebrated figures lie a shadowed tapestry of warriors, teachers, monks, and rebels whose mastery, philosophy, and legacy remain largely untold. These are the forgotten Kung Fu legends, and their stories deserve to rise from the mist of obscurity and claim their rightful place in history. Our journey begins in the turbulent heart of the Ming Dynasty, when rebellion simmered beneath the empire's surface, and the martial arts were more than discipline, they were survival. One such figure, known only as the Iron Sage of Luoyang, wandered the countryside disguised as a beggar. To the untrained eye, he was just another vagabond. But in truth, he was a grandmaster of the Xinyiquan style, able to channel his internal energy to break stones with a whisper of a palm. The Iron Sage trained no disciples, wrote no manuals, and vanished before the Qing banners reached his village. Yet whispers of his single-handed defeat of a corrupt garrison linger in temple murals, painted not by hand, but by those who heard his legend in silence. Then there was Yao Mei, the Silent Orchid. A woman of noble descent who faked her own death to escape an arranged marriage. She fled to the southern mountains and sought refuge in the Wudang sect. There, she absorbed the Taoist principles with unmatched elegance, modifying Tai Chi movements into what became known as the floating petal technique, soft yet deadly, hypnotic yet precise. She defeated warlords without drawing blood, often using an opponent's momentum to render them unconscious. Though her name faded from scrolls, it's said that her essence lives on in the footwork of modern Wudang practitioners, who move as if dancing through mist. Further east, in the forgotten province of Qishan, lived a blind monk known only as Jian the Listener. Orphaned during the Dzungar invasions, Jian was raised in a hidden monastery where martial arts were taught by sound, rhythm, and intuition. Stripped of sight, his mastery of echolocation gave birth to the chiming fist, a style so elusive that opponents claimed they were defeated by wind. He never spoke a word, and yet his silence became his power. Stories claim he once disarmed 30 armed bandits in a bamboo grove, guided only by the echo of their breaths. His teachings, passed through oral tradition, evolved into meditation forms still practiced in secret in rural Shaanxi. Then there is the tale of Long Rui, the drunken dragon. Unlike the polished warriors of lore, Long Rui was a chaotic spirit, a wandering swordsman with a wine jug in hand and a laugh that could unnerve the sternest general. He perfected a fusion of drunken fist and dragon style that made his movements unpredictable and flowing like water. What made him legendary wasn't just his skill, it was his defiance. When the local governor doubled taxes, Rui walked into the magistrate's hall, spinning through guards like a storm, and left only a cherry blossom pinned to the tyrant's throne. Though his real identity remains disputed, his escapades became folklore among village storytellers. In the north, among the icy ridges near Mongolia's edge, lived Fang, called the Snow Wolf. Once a soldier betrayed by his own command, Fang fled into exile and trained in solitude with a nomadic tribe. He developed the Snow Wolf Claw, a brutal, claw-like striking style mimicking the ferocity of the wolves he lived among. Fang believed that survival was the highest form of mastery. His students were trained in the cold, barefoot, striking frozen wood until it cracked like porcelain. Though never celebrated, his techniques influenced northern mantis styles and shaped battlefield conditioning that endures today. Among the least known yet most influential was Lan Xiu, the bamboo ghost. A master of disguise, misdirection, and what modern practitioners call soft force, Lan Xiu could change his movement patterns mid-fight, feigning vulnerability and drawing in aggression before turning it against his attacker. His lineage was never formalized. Instead, he traveled town to town teaching peasants how to resist soldiers without arms, using farming tools and body leverage. While emperors waged war for power, Lan Xiu trained resistance fighters to protect their homes. His true name was lost, but his teachings live on in the modified Wing Chun practiced by rural militia for centuries. Perhaps no name conjures more mystery among the old monks of Sichuan than that of the Windless Blade, Master An Shun. Born into poverty during the last days of the Ming Dynasty, An Shun was said to have trained not under any master, but under the very conditions of nature itself. When asked where he learned to strike, he reportedly said, "From the trees who never fall to the wind, and the stream that cuts stone with time." An Shun was unique, not because of his ability to strike fast, but because he moved without disturbing the air. His weapon, a double-edged jian, left no sound when it sliced through bamboo. The silence before his blows became his signature. Some say he could slit a candle's wick without extinguishing the flame. and Shun appeared during conflicts but only sided with those fighting for justice. One winter, when bandits took over a grain store and held a village hostage, and Shun entered through the rear wall like mist. The villagers said they saw the guards fall before they heard anything. When they entered, the bandits lay tied with their own belts, and Shun was already gone. His art, long lost, has never been replicated. But in old kung fu academies, when a strike is clean and silent, students still whisper his name. Further west, past the cliffs of Xiangxi, the legend of Huang Xiu, the Thunder Hermit, survives in fading ballads sung by traveling minstrels. Huang Xiu was born deaf, a perceived curse in a time when communication was sacred among martial orders. But this isolation gave him something more, unmatched sensitivity to vibrations and energy. He trained beneath waterfalls and thunderclaps, learning to sense intention before movement. His style was explosive, grounded in Fang, explosive internal force, but amplified beyond traditional limits. What made Huang Xiu terrifying wasn't just his ability to fight, but his unpredictability. He could strike from impossible angles, his awareness honed like a hawk's. Witnesses of his rare battles claimed he looked like a man possessed by the storm. His greatest act, according to legend, was defeating a warlord's entire escort to protect a mute child wrongly accused of stealing jade. He disappeared afterward, leaving only a broken flute and a folded cloth bearing the ancient character for thunder. Today, some believe the unorthodox Fang scene in modern competitions has threads of Huang Xiu's forgotten teachings woven deep within. Among the forests of Jiangnan lived Bai Fen, known simply as the Vine Woman. Bai Fen was no warrior in the traditional sense. A healer and herbalist by trade, she was forced into self-defense after her village was attacked by mercenaries. To protect the weak, she created an adaptive style based on the way vines entangle and trap their prey. Using sashes, robes, or even vines themselves, Bai Fen would snare, disorient, and disarm attackers with seemingly effortless grace. Her style required no brute strength, only timing, placement, and flexibility. It turned aggression against itself. Her philosophy became legendary among women in the region. Though she never opened a school, many learned from her in secret, and her techniques spread informally. Over time, parts of her approach were absorbed into female-focused internal styles. Yet, few remember her name. In a forgotten grave near Hangzhou, a stone bears the words, "She fought not with fists, but with roots that never broke." In the chaotic trade routes of the Pearl River Delta, one man changed the entire idea of mobility in combat, Yao Mei, the flowing reed. Zhang was a boatman, ferrying goods and people along narrow riverways. After pirates attacked his vessel and slaughtered his family, he disappeared for 7 years. When he returned, he had transformed. Training on the decks of unstable boats, he learned to fight while keeping perfect balance, using circular footwork that could turn an attacker's force into nothing. His hands became extensions of water, never rigid, always redirecting, absorbing, deflecting. Zhang challenged regional fighters to duels on narrow bridges and floating planks. None could match his adaptability. His style became a precursor to what some call water boxing, now rarely practiced, but preserved in fragmented manuscripts in Guangdong. In time, legends say he led a coalition of boat dwellers to defend against coastal invaders. He turned fishing poles into spears, oars into shields, and strategy into salvation. Zhang died unknown, but in every ripple of southern kung fu footwork, his steps still echo. And then there is the tale of Mei Rong, the laughing monk of Yunnan. An outcast from his Shaolin temple for questioning hierarchy, Mei Rong took to the streets, preaching martial arts for liberation, not obedience. His appearance, unshaven, eyes wild, always chuckling, deceived many into underestimating him. But those who challenged him learned a harsh lesson. The more chaotic he seemed, the more deliberate his movements became. He developed the spiral breath method, a breathing technique that synchronized exhalation with spinning strikes. His power was internal, yet externally appeared unstructured. Mei Rong's most famous encounter occurred when he faced off against a Qing enforcer 3 times his size. The monk spun like a leaf in wind, laughing, dodging, and striking. In 10 seconds, the giant was flat on the ground, gasping for air. When asked why he laughed in battle, Mei Rong said, "To remember that fear has no place where breath flows freely." He never stayed in one place for long, and many thought him mad. But the few who trained under him developed resilience, joy, and an understanding of unpredictability in combat. His breathing patterns have since been studied by Qigong scholars and mimic the spiraling motion of galaxies, perhaps accidental, or perhaps divine. Another lost legend arises from the southern hills of Fujian, Lin Shu, the stone dancer. Lin was mute, but his dance-like martial forms told stories of loss, war, and beauty. Influenced by the local opera and temple performances, Lin combined rhythmic footwork with devastating strikes. He believed combat should be beautiful and meaningful, not just efficient. Each movement had a story, and each story had a technique hidden within. Lin Shu was a master of deception, not in trickery, but in rhythm. Opponents would be drawn into the sway of his movements, misjudging when he would strike. He wore crimson silk when performing, moving like fire through the air. Audiences were entranced. But when invaders threatened his province, Lin became a ghostly protector. Witnesses say his red robes were seen flitting across rooftops before a rebel victory. To this day, his influence lingers in traditional Fujian martial opera and the stylized movements of southern kung fu schools, though many no longer know his name. In the frigid northeast, where winters are cruel and bandits roam freely, an old man known as Master Han the Wolf Shepherd carved a life of isolation. He lived with wolves, studied their behavior, and built a martial art inspired by their tactics. Low stances, quick strikes, group defense, his style was rooted in instinct. He taught no one at first, but when a band of escaped slaves found him nearly frozen, he took them in and taught them not just to fight, but to hunt, hide, and live free. Han believed martial arts were not for show, but for survival and escape.